The problem I find with a lot of puzzle games, and I do mean a lot, is that while the developer's intelligence shines through, I myself never feel particularly smart for completing the puzzles. That can be for a myriad of reasons. Perhaps the puzzles are just too easy, perhaps once you get the premise, there's not so much room for the game to challenge you further, but often it's because I find the best solution is to brute force answers without needing to apply all that much logic. There's also the opposite subset of games, where players feel smart for completing them, but the developer hasn't done anything particularly special. Think something formulaic that's been tried and tested, like a well-executed Nonogram or Sudoku adaptation. They're nice enough, but are never going to blow anyone away with their gameplay. The sweet spot for me, then, what makes for an excellent puzzle game, is one that does both. Something that gives me plenty of personal eureka moments, but also impresses with its concept and level design. Blockshop from Foolbox Studios definitely falls into that category. In Blockshop, each puzzle has the player take various machines and conveyor belts to transform the level's input blocks to those displayed in the output. I've seen a somewhat lazy comparison elsewhere between Blockshop and Tobias Springer's Shapez, previously shapez.io. The similarities are really only skin deep. Admittedly, the number of minimalistic games about manipulating shapes to make other, more complex shapes is rather limited, but in terms of gameplay they are very distinct from one another. I know there's a puzzle DLC for Shapez, which is a lot more in the ballpark of Blockshop, but to compare those is a disservice to the latter. Blockshop is built from the ground up with the puzzles in mind. I should mention, this game is hard. Not aggravatingly so, but I think you could look at the concept and assume that there wouldn't be a huge amount of room for depth when it comes to difficulty. I would argue that the level of challenge is perhaps Blockshop's biggest strength, both in each individual chapter and across the game as a whole. Every new machine, which you typically get at the start of a new chapter, is introduced with a basic puzzle or two to ease it into your repertoire. Before you know it, you're integrating it into a complex solution with the rest of your machines, muddling your way through to the solution. The game's responsiveness, cleanly updating in real time as you add and remove machines, encourages players to experiment. It's very easy to throw something down to test what happens, and to apply tweaks to your factory without it feeling cumbersome or like you're damaging any progress you might have already made. When players are really stuck, there's a hint system, which usually provides just enough information to help guide you to a solution by telling you where to place a handful of machines. For the most part, it's excellently implemented. I'm sure there are puzzles that might have got frustrating without it, but it never feels like the solution has been handed to you. There's still a sense of accomplishment upon completing a level, even when you've used every hint available. My sole hang-up with Blockshop does come from this system, however. I had all the hints unlocked on my final incomplete puzzle, and had to come back to it on a few occasions, still unable to quite figure out how to solve it. I'd put down the machines where the hints told me to, repeatedly got to what felt like 90% of the solution, but not quite had room to fit the final machine I needed to make it work. The hints were, for all intents and purposes, locked in their places. I didn't consider trying any solution without them, even though one machine in particular seemed to be getting in the way of everything else I was trying to accomplish. Eventually, I uprooted it, ignoring that hint entirely, and found a way to make it work within a couple of minutes. I'm sure there was a solution somewhere that used that hint, but in that one instance, it was probably hindering me far more than it helped. Given the game's 81 levels, or 108 including the even harder bonus levels, I think it would be almost impossible to avoid one or two cases like this without an unrealistic amount of playtesting and QC. But for my final level of the main game to be completed with a sense of frustration rather than accomplishment did take the shine off ever so slightly. It's difficult to complain too much though, considering that the hints used in other levels almost certainly saved cumulative hours of head scratching and hair pulling. It's a key part of ensuring the aforementioned difficulty curve lands in just the right place on a player-by-player basis. Blockshop is a wonderful and challenging little puzzle, and an excellent, polished debut from Foolbox Studios. It's awarded 4 stars by IndieLoupe.